Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Huge Chess Brain in the 15-minute pool on ICC. He opens with d4, let's play d5. Take a look at my opponent. 2,700 games played in the 15-minute pool. 1,700 wins, 879 losses, peak rating of 2133. Knight bd2 on move 3. Don't know that I've encountered that one before. There's not a lot of virtues of bringing the knight to d2 that early. Could be a precursor to like a Kali Zukertort setup with e3, b3, bishop b2. I'm just going to play bishop f5. Since there's no pressure on my center, we can use that time to get the bishop outside the chain. And this would be very early by me, but I think I might play h6 so that the bishop always has a retreat square. If e6, knight h4 could be played. So given that there's zero pressure on my center right now, I think I will play that. And then let's play e6. Probably the castle, yep. So I could try to play c5 and then put my knight on c6. Could also just develop like bishop e7 and castle. The possibility of c5 intrigues me. The only thing I'm wondering is if they would react with c4 and kind of change course and try to open the position rather than keep it closed. So let's say c5, c4, knight c6, c takes d5, e takes d5. Yeah, I'd have to play with an isolated pawn in that case. But on the other hand, my bishop's already out. That's a little more exciting than just playing bishop e7. Let's try it. I'm not sure I would do this against a higher rated player, probably not. But I have a feeling white might react passively, yeah, something like e3 and then c3 to come. So if you think your opponent's going to adopt kind of a monotone setup, you can take a few more liberties in the opening. So they're just not going to adjust and try to punish you. Yeah, so white is now going for this bishop b2 move. I might take on d4 now when they would have to take back with a pawn eventually. So take on d4. They take with their pawn, let's say. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Let's do it. I love the fact that my bishop's outside the chain. A lot of times in the Kali Zukertort, the bishop ends up getting trapped on c8. But since I played bishop f5 and only then e6, I'm not going to suffer that fate. So white's plan in this line is usually to play like bishop b2 and then get the knight to e5. So I'm tempted to play rook c8 to kind of remind them that this c2 pawn is potentially weak. It's not a bad move, so let's do it. I'll wait to put this bishop somewhere. I just want to see how white responds to rook c8. Because actually on this move, it just crossed my mind that maybe knight b4 is possible. Planning c3 and then knight d3. Going after this dark square bishop. That'd be kind of cool. What if knight b4, c4? Would I be confident playing knight to d3 then? But then bishop here. Not so sure about that. Bishop takes c2 doesn't work right now. Knight b4 on the other hand. Knight b4, c4, bishop to c2, maybe? Queen c1. Bishop d3. That's kind of a cool line. I'll try it. I think it's pretty low risk, actually. I don't see, even if they play c4, how they would punish me so much. But I like this possibility of bishop c2. Bishop c2, and then even if the queen moves, I can always withdraw my bishop to d3 or a different square. How about this? Bishop c2, queen c1, bishop d3, hitting the rook. If rook e1, I have knight c2, forking the two rooks. So I think after bishop d3, they'd have to play rook d1. And then I can play bishop c2, but they can go right back to f1. That's annoying. So maybe they have a perpetual if they want. Still, I think I'm going to do this. So usually this opening is kind of slow, but we've already initiated hostilities. Yeah, they have to play queen c1 now. Because queen e2 runs into bishop d3. Queen e1 runs into knight to d3. So that move was forced. Now let's come here. Wait, did I look at rook d1, bishop e2? Because I think that's what I was originally thinking. Yeah, rook d1, bishop e2, and then if rook e1, I have knight d3, forking the queen and the rook. That wins an exchange. Wow, so he's just going to play rook e1 and allow knight c2. A bold decision. But yes, it looks like knight c2 just cleanly wins an exchange. I'm just checking before I do it to make sure there's no tricks. I don't believe there is. Bombs away. He's pinning my e-pawn, but that scarcely matters. So maybe allowing knight b4 was just a huge mistake by white. We'll find out. Yeah, it appears to be the case that they're just going to let me take that exchange. Now, which one do I take? I think I like taking the e1 rook because that's the more active rook. This one's just sitting in a corner, so I don't feel inclined to take that one. I could also wait a move and just not take either of them, judging that it's difficult for white to do anything anyways. But I think just grabbing the material is pretty decent. And bishop e7 is the only other move I'm thinking, but yeah, maybe knight e5. Let's just take it right away. So mission accomplished in the opening. We've already won material. I think white's going to send that knight to e5. That's pretty clear. They took with the queen, so they didn't want to divert this knight. So just bishop e7, bishop e7, knight e5, bishop h7. They're going to probably try to push on the queen side. This bishop is in enemy territory and it's undefended, but as long as I'm careful, that's not going to matter. I could also just play bishop f5 here. Like, why is h7 a better square than f5? Yeah, let's go to f5. Change my mind. Maybe that also stops bishop h3. So white's going to push on the queen side. I kind of anticipated that happening. Let's castle. Probably knight d7 is what I'd like to do and trade a pair of knights. They were playing kind of a restriction game, aren't they? So they're not going to advance much further. They're probably just going to try to keep the position closed and use their two knights. Knight d7 would propose a trade. I'd like to break up these pawns, but I don't know if b6 is, if it's the right moment to play b6. So let's start with knight d7. My opponent's moving pretty fast, and I don't want to get too far down on time, so I'll try to pick up the tempo myself. Yeah, b6 really doesn't do a whole lot. Maybe bishop f6 right now. That looks constructive. Get the bishop on a better diagonal. Maybe I can try to play, like, set up a knight takes c5 shot. Because note that if knight takes c5 right now, the d-pawn is unable to capture on c5 because they lose the bishop. So maybe now is a good time for b6. Actually, that's not a bad plan. Yeah, let's do that. b6. They can't reply with c6. Probably rook c1 will be played. But actually on rook c1, I can still do that same idea. B takes c5, b takes c5, and knight takes or rook takes c5. Probably knight takes c5. So they're chasing me. Just bishop g6 probably. Or h7. I don't know if it matters too much. I chose g6 just so the king has access here. Although on h7 it's less exposed, like maybe knight e5 in the future could be annoying. How does white defend against this threat of b takes c5? I don't know. Maybe they have to do rook a2 as awkward as that looks, to defend the bishop. Playing the bishop to c3 doesn't help. The bishop's also undefended there. Rook b1 is impossible because a bishop takes b1. Queen c1, I guess, could be played, but that walks right into my c-file pressure. I think they have to play one of those moves, though, rook a2 or queen c1. Yep, plays rook a2, so he sees what's coming. Now I'm thinking a5 might be decent. Try to take this concept even further, break up their pawns. Let's do it. So if they take on a5, I will take on c5. I won't recapture on a5. Maybe I can play my rook over to a8. Although then they might have c6 as a reply, so I'd have to time that correctly. I get the sense white should play like bishop f1 right now. Maybe try to come into a6 or use their bishop on b5. Somewhere towards the queen side. I might reroute this knight to c6 later. Say we get a structure where they have just a pawn on c5 and a pawn on d4, and the a and the b pawns are gone for both sides. I might play knight b8 to c6 and use my knight to blockade and also attack the d pawn. So the biggest factor in whether I'm going to win this game, I think, is my success in knocking out white's queenside pawns. That's the only advantage white has over me right now. Everything else is in black's favor, especially the material. So if I can just dismantle this queenside construction and make sure that this c-pawn isn't potent for white down the stretch, I'm going to win this game. So they take on b6. That's exactly the move I like to see. Because now I can take b4. Don't even have to take b6 right away. I can just take b4 to start. Yeah, let's do that. If b7, I just play rook b8 and then take on b7 next move. No big deal. I think if white wanted any chance there, they would have had to find a way to keep the pawn on c5. And I bet you'll see that reflected in the computer analysis too. b7, yeah, just rook b8. No reason to do anything else. Rook c7 would be the same, I suppose. So on takes, we'll just take with our rook on b7, and we'll be attacking b4, and that's an isolated pawn. It's also a pass pawn, but the fact that it's isolated is huge. I don't think it'll be too much of a struggle to win it. Knight e5, aggressive. So I can take either with my bishop or my knight. My first thought was bishop takes, but I think their point is that after bishop takes e5, d takes e5, rook takes b7, take b4. If I play rook takes b4, they do have bishop a3, skewering my rooks, although I could reply with rook a4 then, couldn't I? And skewer them right back. I'm pretty sure both knight takes e5 and bishop takes e5 are good moves right now. Maybe knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight c5. That looks pretty tempting. Then we're threatening knight d3 and also maybe pawn b3. It's not a big deal that we forfeited the bishop pair there. Bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight c5, queen e3 maybe. I mean, knight takes e5, d takes e5, bishop e7 is also just really pretty strong as well. Maybe I should just do that. That's way simpler. Yeah, let's do it. I'm getting close to 5 minutes, so let's just play it like this. Bring the bishop back to e7. This pawn's always a goner. Might be nice to keep the pair of bishops, too. That was like purely a matter of preference right there. They're going to try to keep their A pawn, but I don't think that's going to work out too well. I guess knight b3 is their plan next move. Maybe I can cross that by playing bishop to c2. Bishop c2 followed by pawn b3. Let's do that. Demonstrating that I'm not in a hurry to win the b pawn. That pawn's not going anywhere. So if I can push this pawn up to b3, then I've got a pass pawn of my own. Maybe my bishop can come into b4. So white plays knight there. Okay. Pawn b3 or bishop b3. Let's play pawn b3. Attack the rook. Just going to play rook a1. And now I think just take. Knight d4 will probably be played, and then I'm thinking bishop c5. Which takes the sting out of any attempt to play knight c6. Queen c3. Okay, they're going to go knight b5. Probably queen b6 against that one. Attacking f2. Bishop takes f2 is not a threat, but in the future maybe it will be. Probably rook a8 is good enough here. Just attack the a4 pawn once more. Not many avenues for counterplay for white. Now I'm ahead 3 points of material. I'm up an exchange plus pawn. Yeah, bishop f1. Probably they need to. That was the move I mentioned a while ago. I thought they might play that. So how to get at this a4 pawn? It's the only thing. I can also play d4 and then play d3, can't I? But d4, they can switch their bishop back to g2. Maybe rook d7 is best right now. I don't think I need my rook on the b file necessarily anymore. This pawn on b3 is defended by my bishop. My rook on b7 is not doing anything. So maybe I'll do this looking to play d4. And it's nice that they can never play rook d1. So I might just be marching this pawn now. It seems like white's got to take a shot at my king side somehow, but I don't envision that being a problem. They're going to try to set up like an annoying blockade. Let's play bishop e4. Ah, they're getting ready for a5. I failed to notice that until now, but hopefully that doesn't matter too much. a5, I can play queen b8. I was thinking with bishop e4 that I'd just get ready to push my d-pawn. So a5, queen b8. If a6, I can play the queen back to b6. It's one of these positions, like it's totally clear black is winning, but you actually have to win the game still. That annoying thing in chess where you have to convert your advantage. And at the time, it's not completely trivial to do that. h4, so they don't play a5 for some reason. They're going to go for the attack. Okay, so in that case, I think d4 is good. I'll let them have their fun on the king side, whatever that may be. g5, I can just take it if I want. I can even just play h5. Maybe that's the safest, h5. d4 is kind of nice because now the e5 pawn is harder for white to protect. The bishop is no longer staring at that pawn. It also disrupts any potential for them to like blockade on the d4 square. Queen f4 could be played, attacking my bishop. Probably bishop back to h7 in that case. Or maybe bishop c6. Bishop c6 also possible. I might want to keep that bishop close to my king, though. Also stop them from playing bishop d3. Yeah, so bishop h7 was the move I was thinking. Let's do it. This rook is loose on a8, so watch out for anything on the long diagonal. Yeah, they get on that diagonal. Probably just double up the rooks on the d-file. a5 would hang the knight, so that's no issue. And let's just hammer this d-pawn up the board. d3, d2, d1, queen. As long as this knight is loose, the a-pawn push is not dangerous. If they play the knight into d6, I can take it with my bishop. And if pawn takes, just like queen takes d6, I'll be defending the d4 pawn in that case as well. Bishop f3. So this might be an attempt by white to, I don't know, get their king out of the way and, or maybe do that, yeah. But just d2 looks like it's going to work. Keep pushing. If bishop takes b3, we promote. Bishop c2 is a threat now as well. Bring the bishop all the way back to that c2 square. I wonder if white had played a5 when I thought they could, if that would have given them better chances. I think that's still winning for black, but that would have made things more difficult at least. Yep, g5, probably too little too late. Let's take. If they take with the queen, I can take on f2 with check. So they take that way. Now bishop c2 as planned. Let's do it. So they're still blockading the d1 square, so as long as that bishop doesn't move, I at least temporarily prevent it from winning, but I don't think it'll be long now. They move their king. Maybe rook d3. If I take, they get their rook involved real quick. I don't like that so much. Rook d3 looks pretty good. Let's do that. If knight d6, I'll just take that knight and then probably play like queen c6 check, or even just queen takes d6 again. If they move this bishop, then I promote. Yeah, white's going for the last-ditch attack, I think. Let's take that guy. Now the f-file is open. My king's a little weak, but there's not enough pieces for them to attack with. If queen g4, I can check on c6, or just play like rook f8, maybe. Just have to be alert to any last-minute tactics white can throw at us. There's not much, but chess is a remarkable game. There's always something. Even with depleted material, there's always something your opponent is going to throw at you. Could even be a stalemate trap. They have no material left, and bam, they hit you with a stalemate. It's happened to me before. That's why you always had to be alert, even up till the very end. You can really never relax in chess. Okay, so that move, I think just capturing is good. They're probably going to try to set up something on the long diagonal. But But let's just take a queen trade would be winning pretty trivially for us. So I think they're going to move the queen and try to do something, but they can't coordinate the queen and the bishop to attack g7, so I don't see what white's going to come up with. Can always play queen d5 check next move. I like that possibility. They could play bishop e5, but then I check and probably play rook f8. Okay, so queen there. Let's give this check.
Check.
If bishop f3, we can just take it with our rook. And if queen takes, there's bishop e4. Skewering. So the king has to move. And now queen f5 or just queen h5 even is good. How about this? Take d1, rook takes, and then queen h5. But that hangs e6. Annoying. I don't even really need e6 though. Okay, let's just take, first of all. So queen h5, I'll give them the e6 pawn, and then hide my king on h7. And they can't defend this rook. Let's do that. So I'm giving up that e6 pawn, but that's kind of dead weight anyways. I don't really need it, so
check.
We'll just let them have it. If f3, I think just queen takes f3 is going to win. There's no check on h3 in that case either. White could do something truly last-ditch here, like bishop takes g7, but I don't even have to take that bishop. Just take on d1 with check. Yeah, nothing left for white to do. It's good to find a simplifying continuation like that. Like maybe I could have played directly for a checkmate, but playing queen h5 and forcing them to either play for this position where they're just losing the rook on d1 or trade the queens, which is going to be a pretty simple technical task for me, I think was helpful. That simplifies my decision making under time pressure. He's putting that huge chess brain to work, but I don't think he's going to find anything. There's not even a way for white to make it messy. That's the problem. Probably he'll play f3, but just queen takes and... Okay, so he resigned. All right, so we won the exchange early on, and then the rest of the game was converting that advantage. But I will be curious to see what the engine thinks about white's queenside structure, because I think this game was lost for white when they decided to take on b6. So move number 23. They played a good move with rook a2, like recognizing that I was threatening to take on c5 and then take on c5 again. So they have to defend that bishop, but taking on b6 ensures the ultimate collapse of their queenside. So let's go and take a look at this. So if white's going to play this system, usually they start with pawn e3. Knight bd2 just strikes me as a less flexible version of this. And since there's no pressure on the d-pawn, white hasn't played a queen's gambit, I can just get the bishop out and play bishop f5. You shouldn't just automatically play a move like e6 here, because that's what you normally do. Like if you're a queen's gambit decline player or something. No, you should take the opportunity to liberate your bishop, in my opinion. So g3... I played h6. Arguably, this move is unnecessary. I'm not even sure if I had omitted this move, whether white would have played knight h4, but I wanted to make sure my bishop could retreat. Now here I made the first major decision, I think, whether to play c5 or do something else, and I went ahead and played c5. I think c4 would be critical. White meeting action in the center with a corresponding reaction and creating a lot of tension in the middle. Now I was thinking of a line like, let's say knight c6 and then c takes d5, e takes d5, maybe take here, bishop takes. This resembles a Tarrasch defense, but probably a good one for black because I have my bishop out. I've already played h6, so if white plays something like knight b3 and I come here, they can't pin me with bishop g5. So I was willing to play this isolated d-pawn position. I don't play a lot of isolated pawn positions, but this would be an IQP position, isolated queen's pawn position that I would be okay with playing. Let me turn on the engine, see what it says. Yeah, it says roughly equal. And the engine does like c4. But white kind of automatically played e3. And it's weird in the Kali to have a fianchettoed bishop, now that I think about it. Usually the bishop's on e2, so already I prefer black's position. b3, I took here. Oh, and knight b4 is even good this move. Or at least it's possible this move. They can play knight e1 and guard, though. That is true. And what if rook here? c4. Yeah, this doesn't look like much for black. Still comfortable, but maybe it's not much. I think rook c8 first is a little sneakier. And maybe they should play a3 to try to roll out any knight b4 business. That would be my move if I were white. But they played bishop b2, and I just couldn't help myself. I went after the c-pawn. So I'm hitting that c-pawn 3 times. And if c3, I just thought knight d3 was excellent for me, attacking the bishop. Rook b1, defending, take. I can win c3 or even, yeah, go for the attack on the rook. That rook is trapped, isn't it? They're going to lose one of their rooks early on for one of my minor pieces. That's like the game. So instead they played c4, and the engine wants to do knight d3 instead. Why is that the case? Because I thought my line was just winning material by force. Okay, now it's changed its mind to bishop c2. Yeah, and if queen e2, there's bishop d3 skewering the queen to the rook. And if queen e1, there's also bishop e3, but there's also knight d3, which is even stronger, it seems, attacking the queen and the bishop. So queen c1, and now bishop d3 attacking the rook. And white played this directly. That surprised me. I thought they would at least go here, but I think after bishop e2, once I spotted this move, I had a really good feeling because I knew I was going to win the exchange. Because now the only safe square for the attacked rook is here, and then we get a knight d3 with a fork once again. So I think after knight b4, white is bound to lose the exchange. The eval probably isn't higher for black yet because, I do go up the exchange, but the fact that it's a rook is going to limit the damage. White's minor pieces are active and involved in the game, so white will have a lead in development. It's time-consuming to actually win this exchange. What if there's a better way for white to give it up, though? The computer says knight e5 or c5 right away. Take f1, bishop takes. Yeah, there might be a way that white can give the exchange to speed up the development. I don't think it's going to alter the assessment that black is just doing spectacularly here, and white doesn't have a whole lot of compensation, but maybe they can gain a tempo or two some way. But as played, I get in the fork, knight c2, c5, and I just banked the material right away. I didn't want to mess around. Knight e5 attacking my bishop, so bishop f5. And I think they did the right thing because, as I was describing during the game, I think the only compensation white really has for the exchange is the fact that they've made strides on the queen side and these pawns are kind of imposing. a3 is maybe too modest. Maybe they should go for a4. And I'd be looking to swap down, probably fight back on the queen side, just as I tried to do in the game. I didn't expect this move, knight df3. Or, sorry, knight ed3. Yeah, I was expecting what the computer is saying, knight df3. Reinforcing. Trying to keep a knight on the square. Because it's probably worth it for white to do that, even though they have to trade a pair of pieces. That might be the better way of playing the position. b6, again, I can try for this b6 move. c6 is probably going to be too unstable. I can play f6 and maybe even potentially give back 1 point of material to get rid of white's queenside domination. Here I'm up a pawn in a pretty symmetrical position. So white moved the knight back to f3, and I played bishop f6. I just wanted my bishop on a better diagonal. h3, but now I get in b6. I don't think h3 was helping white too much. That seems pretty slow. Better to play rook c1 according to the engine. That way, I suppose if this, yeah, c6 could be played, attacking my knight, and it's supported by the rook. So h3 was not useful. b6, and now the threat is take, b takes, and knight takes. And if they take with the d-pawn then the bishop hangs. So they had to play the awkward move after g4 attacking my bishop, rook a2 to defend the bishop. And now I played a5 looking to completely destroy the structure. The engine still likes this, huh? I was a little hesitant to unbalance the game, though, because I'm ahead in material, and I know, like, technically speaking, this should be a win. So even though the engine says this is almost -2 for me, this is like a different type of position than what we had before. And now it's like 3 versus 1 on the queen side and 5 versus 3 on the other areas of the board. Yes, this is probably still good for black, but I don't want to give white another passed pawn, even if it means kicking up my advantage a little bit. I think a5, at least to me, makes a little more sense. Trying to break up the pawns and leave this pawn on d4 for now. Yeah, and this was the move I really heavily criticized. I think white's just losing after that move. They have to do anything they can to keep the pawn on c5. So the engine says bishop f1. Yeah, and I'd have to find a way to knock white's fortress down over here and disrupt their structure. It's not going to be super simple. Queen c7, connect the rooks together. Bishop b5, rook a8. Probably try to get this rook over to the field of action soon. This keeps the tension and would have been much more challenging, for sure. But yeah, as played after this, I think there's several ways black can do this, and possibly I didn't even play the best way at certain moments. But it's just a slow grind. Here I debated a little bit about whether to take with the bishop or the knight on e5. This continuation, take, knight c5, caught my eye, because knight d3 could be a threat. I didn't like queen e3, though. I thought maybe white could do this, although this is also -3.5. So knight takes, pawn takes, bishop back to e7, a4. Probably correct. White should keep some counterplay. I don't know, maybe I can just take on b7. Maybe I don't need that bishop c2 move, because probably I can play bishop c2 on the next move, even if the knight gets to the blockading square b3. Yeah, this is also winning. So the only other thing I'm wondering about is if my conversion by putting my pieces on the queen side was flawed. The engine says send the queen over to the king side, queen h4, and attack f2 that way. I mean, I think naturally you're probably going to want to keep more pieces in the vicinity of the a-pawn. That's, at this point, the only thing that can hurt us. Where did I miss a5? Yeah, that was right here. I played bishop e4 because I want to play d4, but what didn't I like about that? I think I didn't want my bishop getting stuck on c2. Oh no, I didn't like bishop g2, but not on this move. I think it was mainly a desire to just not have my bishop stuck on c2 when I play d3, but maybe I can just play d4 directly. The computer thinks it's best. So instead I played bishop e4, but then I realized they actually could play a5, and white's previous move, queen d2, was protecting the pawn and preparing that. And this is still winning, but definitely white should play a5. This is like the one chance they had to move that a-pawn, and they didn't take it. And once my pawn hits d3 coming up, yeah, and their bishop's diverted a little bit. Like now a5 is never going to happen because the knight is hanging, and white just has no counterplay. It takes several moves for me to eventually set up the win, but yeah, there's nothing to be done for white. They tried some last-minute ideas towards my king, but it's too much material. And as I was saying here, you just have to be practical with how you win a completely won position. There might be faster ways to do this. I'm sure the engine's going to point them out, but queen h5 just looks so easy to me because
Check.
after takes, king h7, and as you see, it's a win. So objectively, after queen h5, white's best decision would be to take and enter this ending that's plus 10 for me. So, okay, so I think Huge Chess Brain played too quickly in the opening and chose a setup that looks very suspicious. And I think they just underestimated the attack on c2. And by the time I played after bishop b2, knight b4, it's too late. White's going to be shedding material. Now, you have to avoid falling into the trap of thinking that you deserve to win after something like this happens. Like, I know I'm winning, but there's a difference between knowing you're winning versus feeling like you deserve to win. So, as an experienced chess player, I can look at like this resulting position and say, I know I'm winning, and with proper play, I should win, but I also realize I have to put in the work to get there, and I don't deserve anything yet. You know, you never deserve any result in chess. You get what the play dictates. So I want to stay alert, vigilant. I don't want to underestimate White's queenside pawns. I think White could have put up more resistance had they kept that pawn on c5 as I was describing. But as played, White eventually collapsed. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.